Have y'all noticed lately that my interviews have been way more philosophical than usual? That's because I don't want to ask these bands, oh, what's next for the band? What kind of amps you use? That sort of thing. And I've got a really good one for you this week. Check out this. That is the band Profiler with their new record, A Digital Nowhere, out this Friday. And the reason why I wanted to talk to them is because this album is heavily inspired by the writings and thoughts of Terence McKenna, who is somebody I greatly admired.
Get a degree, get a job, get a this, get a that, and then you're a player. You don't even want to play in that game. You want to reclaim your mind and get it out of the hands of the cultural engineers who want to turn you into a half-baked moron consuming all this trash that's being manufactured out of the bones of a dying world. Where is that at?
He heavily believed in this theory called the singularity, which is when humanity will transcend our current bounds because of the exponential growth of technology. He was also a psychedelic explorer, and also my friend here in Profiler also infused a lot of Buddhist philosophy and thought into this album, so I really wanted to ask him about his thought processes and what he thinks about that sort of thing. So without further delay, here's my interview with Profiler. Mike from Profiler, welcome to Heavy Metal Philosophy.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Glad to have you. I really wanted to talk to you about your new record, A Digital Nowhere, because as I was going through the PR stuff, it said that the lyrics were inspired by Terence McKenna. And the album title, A Digital Nowhere, song titles like Artifice, To Utopia, The Living Receiver, that really resonates with me as a Terence McKenna fan. Do you have a similar background?
Yeah, for sure. I was turned on to Terence McKenna by Northlane, because in Northlane's album Singularity, Terence has a little speech, a little kind of segment in one of their tracks, Singularity. And yeah, ever since then, I kind of been hooked on his philosophy, and he's a super interesting guy. So it kind of weaves some of the concepts of the album for sure.
Yeah, there's 100 YouTube videos of great music with some Terence McKenna speech, and they always just give me goosebumps because it's so profound, and then you've got great music behind it, very much like yours. Yeah, that's exactly how I discovered him as well.
Nice one. Yeah, he's an amazing guy. I think him and Alan Watts as well are
Yes.
super interesting philosophers that yeah, need more input in the mainstream because their advice is amazing.
And did you go into the album thinking you wanted to have like a theme like that, or is it just sort of comes up naturally?
It sort of came out naturally, yeah. I would say the music was written first before the lyrical content. But that's those concepts that they talk about is something that is relevant daily in my life. So it's only natural that it came out lyrically on the album.
Yeah, and sonically, I think it sort of fits too. It's got a vibey sort of sound to it.
Yeah. Yeah, like we want a heavy record, but like yeah, as you say, with some vibes and some kind of feels within it as well. Like you said, I mean, The Living Receiver is probably one of my favorites. It's just kind of got a vibe to it. Kind of has that nostalgic element, but also sounds new. So yeah, we're pretty stoked on the tracks.
Okay, so now I might commit a little bit of blasphemy because when I was younger and I discovered Terence McKenna, I absolutely loved it, and he had this optimism about his observations and predictions, particularly when it comes to the singularity, which is what your album's about. The confluence of technology becoming unrecognizable, and he had all these grand ideas about what that would mean for humanity. And maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just being cynical about it, but now 30 years later I'm looking, and his predictions did come true, but just maybe not in the ways that I think he thought. I don't think it's quite been as positive and transcendental as maybe he thought.
Yeah.
He loved the internet. He called it the birth of a global mind or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, it has been, but maybe that mind is a bit schizophrenic and
Yeah.
has multiple personalities. You know, I felt the same way. I thought, oh man, the internet's coming out, and we're they're not going to be able to fool us anymore because we're going to be able to get our hands on all the information that we need or want immediately. But
Mm.
what I didn't predict and what he didn't predict is a lot of that information is bullshit. And you have to sift through it to actually find the truth.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it's become a really useful tool, no doubt, but it's also come with some very heavy side effects. There's a lot of issues around social media and the birth of the internet as well. I think it's yin and yang. It's both positive and negative. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think so, yeah, some of his predictions were right. Same with Alan Watts as well. But I think yeah, we're in kind of a difficult time potentially with humanity in general. Um, and yeah, I don't know how much the internet is, how much that affects it. I think it's got some bad points as well that we all need to be careful with.
And other technologies as well, like AI. He was a big proponent of AI, and I don't think he would have imagined that people would be using it the way that they're using it now. It's
Yeah,
particularly in regards to art, um,
yeah.
especially on the visual art side. But I'm starting to see a lot of AI music as well. Are you seeing anything like that?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a song on YouTube, Linkin Park covering somebody that I used to know. Um it's an AI cover and it's insane how good it is, how close to a kind of meteora type of sound it is. So it's useful. It's also kind of scary. I think we need to be treading carefully. And yeah, I don't think we can even imagine what's going to happen the next 10 years because that's part of what Terence talked about, this kind of rapid technological rat race that we're in, that we want to keep developing, and where that's going to head is the singularity of either, it becomes useful or it becomes negative, and it ends badly for us. So I guess we'll have to wait and see, but we're kind of reaching some sort of point now of no return potentially.
Mm,
Um, or we'll be all right. I don't know. It feels tense around
yes.
technology right
Yeah.
now, right?
Agreed. It's like I feel like we'll be all right, but it's a little scary.
Yeah.
Speaking of prior generations visionaries, there was an AI George Carlin comedy special that just
Yeah.
came out. It's like,
It's good.
I don't want to be a luddite, and I don't want to pine for the past, but this is weird, man.
Yeah, it's weird times. I think that's what some of the album is talking about. Like, it's not like it was better before we had iPhones and technology and social media, but it comes with a lot of complications, and I don't know how healthy it is for young people or the human mind to have constant stimulation, in the way that we're doing it in the modern age. I think I don't know. Yeah, it's scary where it's going. And yeah, I don't think anyone 20 years ago could predict where we are now. So it's a bit freaky to see what's going to happen because it keeps getting better and more intelligent. So it's a crazy time, man. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Like we're in it for the ride, right? Like we can't do anything to
Yeah,
prevent it. So
yeah.
maybe it's a natural evolution of the human species to turn into AI or to have this kind of information overload. But I don't know. It's hard to think that the world's getting into a better place. I don't know if we're going in the right direction right now. I don't know what you think, but yeah, it seems kind of weird.
I'm of two minds. I do think it's the natural evolution, but I also worry that it might be our version of the Tower of Babel. But uh, another thing that Terrence said was that it's going to get so weird, and all of the systems that were in place to sort of keep everything copacetic are going to break down. And then we will have no choice but to discuss how weird everything is. And so when you put an album out like this, that's kind of what I think about. It's like, okay, now people are talking about this.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's talked about with people that are tuned into it. I think it can be ignored quite a lot, but yeah, for me personally, this the album we had to kind of discuss those areas, but then also like the concepts in like films that have previously discussed it that are way ahead of its time, like The Matrix.
Yeah.
Um, there's a little theme about that film. It's more specifically the first one, because I think that's a great representation of kind of not necessarily regarding like the machine world element, but like the simulated element and the AI element is like it's so ahead of its time. And you can't help like watching those films and being like, is that what we're in? Is that what's happening right now? Seems pretty real. But
It's one of the most important films in my life and the way that I think,
yeah,
you can look at it like a great action movie and they were in a computer simulation is neat, but I think of the simulation more as a an analogy towards society. And
yeah,
I was actually thinking about that movie this morning. Funny that you bring it up. I was thinking about that movie this morning when I was thinking about some of the questions I wanted to ask you and thinking about Terence McKenna and thinking about the proliferation of misinformation on the internet and how it's actually kind of harder to find the truth now because you have to dig through so much bullshit to get to it and you have to determine what's true and what isn't. And that's the way I think about Neo. Everything that happened in the Matrix, it really happened in his mind. He was
yeah,
he was plugged in, and so every fight scene is really a battle of ideas. And what separated Neo from everybody else wasn't that he was a stronger or faster fighter. It's that he was more skilled at at parsing what was the illusion and what was real. And that's kind of what
yeah.
we have to do today when we look at society with the bombardment of different, like you say, stimulation at all times.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And as you say, it's like it's not necessarily that we're in a simulation, but it's how society uh like how we, go to jobs and pay our rent and bills. It's kind of like a constructed reality made for us that we kind of don't necessarily question and just live in. Because a lot of people don't have a choice. Like you gotta work to pay your rent and bills. I'm not saying that's like an issue. That is how it is, but it kind of is a kind of it's a system that we're all operating in. I don't know if it's the right way of going about things. Like, I mean, we're the only species on the planet that pays to live here. Um, and that's just it's good. It's great benefits of being in a society, but it's also a crazy concept that a lot of people have to do things they hate doing just to live and survive. It's pretty wild. So I can't help thinking there's a pyramid of control potentially from the top down to the people at the bottom. But yeah, I think you got to be careful about what you say these days because then they kill people off. So I won't say too much.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing that separates the fiction from the reality. Neo was a hero and he was able to break free, but in reality, and I was talking about this in a previous interview with a philosopher friend of mine. He's actually also in the UK. He's a PhD candidate in metal studies, which I didn't even know was a thing, and I'm super jealous. But we were talking about how even when you're aware of certain concepts, you still can't break free. Like,
Yeah,
if you're a pathological liar and then you study psychology and then you understand, the diagnosis and what caused you to be that way, it's not like a flip. You flip a switch and then, oh, this
yeah,
guy doesn't lie anymore. It's the same thing when with the Matrix. Neo was able to kung fu his way out of it, but
yeah.
we can be aware and we can describe the system all we want, but we still have to live in it.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, I think you have to be of the world and live in it, but find your own individual way of being free within it. Which I think, the best way to do it for people is trying to find their groove and way of making an income so that they work for themselves if that's what they want to do. But I think plenty of people also are very satisfied and happy in working in high paid jobs for a corporation or whatever. I think that's completely
Sure.
fair. But I think when you're kind of like a musician or an artist, then you might have more to say about how things are set up because it's kind of, I'm not saying it's unfair, but yeah, I think for artists and people that bring color into the world, it's like a lot harder to make a living out of it. And I think that would be healthy if it changed because that is actually what brings a lot of meaning to people's life, like music and art and live music as well. So I think those areas would it'd be great if they were more well funded than things like, I don't have anything against football players, but like, for example, in the UK, people playing football can get paid like 300 grand a week, and that's awesome. But it's how we delegate kind of how people are paid would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, and also with sports, there's a system you can go through to get to that level. And it, not only is there a path, there's a exactly what to like. So in America, for American football, you play football in high school, then you play in university, and each part is a selection process. There's no mystery about how you become a professional athlete. You
Yeah,
just follow that path, and either you make it or you don't. But
yeah.
with musicians, there is no step one, step two, step three. You just have to start working and hope.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But I mean, I think there's a lot in that. And it's also good to try and learn that I guess it's definitely not all about money. Like there's obviously a lot of people that I'll listen to that have made the money and got the success or whatever, but they don't feel entirely satisfied. So I think it's kind of like what you feel within yourself, like being waking up and feeling happy with who you are. Um, that's probably like the best point you can get to because you got billionaires that are like super unhappy and then monks that are like happy and they've got absolutely nothing. And it's kind of like, what does that say about us chasing those materialistic aspects of life? Like it probably does satisfy some people, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to be the answer either. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Yeah. And that was another thing in the press release. It talked about Buddhist concepts in the record. Um, where do you fit that in with this other conversation about technology?
Well, it's kind of like I'm just learning spirituality through other mediums and then kind of regurgitating that or getting that information implied into myself. But like just yeah, just Buddhist teachings like letting go of control, understanding that you have suffering, and understanding that you're not your mind, which I think is probably the biggest difficulty for people is listening to what their mind is saying and believing that it's them, where it's just this mechanism that's continuously making noise. And I think when you can kind of step out of it and realize that it's not that you can't control it, like it's not going to stop, but you can kind of choose what you listen to and what you don't listen to and pick your own belief systems and um yeah, just adopting the present moment of whatever you're doing because I think 95% of the time in your present moment there's actually usually nothing wrong, but we've got so much information coming in from technology that you can feel like you're behind or like you should be doing more, like hustling or like it's just I think it's just difficult for people to yeah, have all this technology going around but then also feel peaceful and calm. Like I think our modern society is like a breeding ground for kind of bad mental health, which is why I
Sure,
think like
yeah.
Buddhist teachings and spirituality can kind of come into that and make people appreciate just what they got, like the life they've got, not comparing to other people and stuff. Like, because obviously people like Andrew Tate and I don't know, influencers that make a lot of money online that are like, if you're not making 10 grand a month, then you're a little bitch and stuff like that. And it's like it's very aggressive and I think it's just difficult for people in this time with that information. Um, so I don't know how people are supposed to navigate that, but turning to spirituality is pretty a pretty good shout, I would say.
Yes, yes. You need something outside of the material, whether it be spirituality or in my case, I turned towards philosophy, but something to insulate myself. Because, I'd love to sit here with my big ego and say, well, I'm just too smart to be hustled by one of these grifter manosphere guys on the internet. But that's not really true. I'm not really that much smarter than any other person. It's just I, I was lucky enough to be interested in things that gave me a perspective outside of the material.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to come back to Buddhism. It's got to be both a blessing and a very useful tool to have, and also it must be so hard to do that and be a musician at the same time because show business never goes smoothly.
Hmm.
It's constantly frustrating,
Yeah.
and it's also rewarding, obviously, and you can really get in the zone with it, and there's no place where when you're in that flow state that you're more in the moment. So
Yeah.
it's got to be equally just so useful and also so difficult to maintain in the music
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. Like I didn't come into a band having a delusion that I think it would be easy, but I think it is very difficult. But that's where I kind of think that kind of surrendering element from Buddhist teachings or just spiritual teachings in general, like not specifically Buddhist teachings, but like taking a spiritual path in your life, like kind of surrendering to what you're doing and like accepting that process. So for example, with us, it's a long, arduous process to get to where we want to get to as a successful band. But you can either kind of like struggle and fight against it and force things and um, stamp your feet and get frustrated that you're not where you want to be, but or you kind of just kind of have to sit back into this flow of like if you believe that your success in whatever field you're doing is kind of inevitable and you kind of look at the steps you've made to get you to where you are now, you can kind of start to like trust the process a little bit. But I think it's hard because I think not just of us, but the end goal for people is like they want to pursue their dreams and get success in it. And that can take like up to a decade for people and it can be really hard. And then they've got some influencer on TikTok that's just made like millions doing like a sea shanty or something. Um, but I think like, yeah, pursuing something that's like raw and authentic and is true to you is yeah, a massive accomplishment. And you get to leave music and art behind and doing what you're doing and interfacing with people and having conversations. Like there might not be as much money in these areas, but I think there's like a lot of substance and gives life a lot of meaning. Like me and my bass player chatted about it on the way back from our show. We were like, there's jobs out there that could be paying us a good salary outside of music, but like I think we'd be miserable not chasing what we want to do. We'd rather be broke all the way up into our 40s and pursue what we want to do. Um, but I think the world doesn't make it easy for sure. It's pretty difficult. So I'm just trying to take an approach of enjoying the process. Um, because I think it will work out for us in one way or another, and I'm gonna enjoy the ride there basically as much as I can.
Very good attitude. And speaking of the process, I want to talk about the sound of the record. Now we've touched on the philosophy of it, and I hope you don't find this offensive because musicians don't like to be compared to other bands, but I'm hearing a lot of different influences here. There's the new metal, there's the Deftones sound. I'm hearing a little bit of Korn, a little bit of Incubus, but I'm also hearing like some modern metalcore. It's very clean sounding, but also melodically, I'm hearing a little bit of indie rock.
There's a
Go
lot.
ahead.
There's a lot going. Everything you just said is yeah, like spot on. There's kind of a some people say there's like a bit of Britpop influence. But I mean, so in context, like I'm 30 now, so I've been listening to a lot of different bands from when I was a kid, and my siblings were listening to yeah, like System of a Down, Korn, Linkin Park, and I must have been what like eight years old or something when I started hearing that. So there's been like a lot of musical input up until the point of starting a band. I'd say most people start a band when they're like 18, but like we started Profiler when I was like what 27. So it's like pretty late. So I guess there's a lot of like background music that's being ingested that's now kind of coming out. Um, so I think people kind of like reference it to new metal, which is well, like I definitely get that. But there's other influences, kind of like Oasis, like Kasabian, Ben
Oh no,
Howard,
yeah.
like an acoustic artist. So there's like singer-songwritery stuff as well. But there's a lot of influences. But I think for us, like the late 90s and 2000s, like sound of metal and new metal was so big. Um, so I think that's kind of like there's a lot of love for us, like Silverchair, Nirvana, Incubus, Deftones, as you say, like just those bands and their musicianship. Like we kind of want to strive to make music that's half as good as that would be great. But yeah, I get a lot of different references from people, which is really interesting. But all the bands you mentioned are spot on.
Yeah, when you said Kasabian, it sort of clicked in my head. I was like, oh shit, yeah, there's that too. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's probably I've listened to the album twice. So probably if you listen to it like six times, you probably come away with like three or four more different references.
right, right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, I'm psyched to see what people think of it because I've been listening to those songs now for like quite a while since they've been mastered. And like I hear like different bits and go through phases. Like I've heard the songs a lot, so I'm like, are these good or whatever? And then I take a break and I go back, and it's like it's cool. Like it's a versatile record. It gives people a lot of different sound that we're into. It's just us finding like what direction we're kind of going in from this point. Um, but it's just as raw as and unauthentic and as original as we can get it. Because I think the trouble with sounding like too new metal is that like we don't want to be like boxed in to that.
Yeah.
Um, it's not that we want to sound like a particular band, but like I don't know, like I love some of what Silverchair do that's a bit lighter and Incubus as well. But then I also love bands like Alpha Wolf that are really heavy, um, and Crystal Lake and stuff like that. So it's just kind of merging these all these subgenres into kind of this sound that's accessible for people as well. Because we do want to be successful. We don't want to be like boxed in by being too heavy or too light. We kind of want to keep a really wide theme going, but that just makes it awkward for us being put on certain shows because I don't really know where we fit in yet, Just trying to
Well,
figure that out.
just keep making records like this one, and you'll have a dearth of material to pick from whichever show you get put on. The
That's it.
album, it starts like heavy, like right away. And there's more heavy parts, but at the end, it's just nice and just lets me
Yeah.
kind of, that was nice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that end track is we wanted it to kind of be like, nice calming end. Um, so yeah, I mean I really appreciate you guys listening to it. Like and being able to chat about it. It's really what's the right word? Because we've been working on it for ages and it feels like what are you working towards when you're doing it? But now like it's happening, it's very satisfying. So I appreciate you taking the interest, dude.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And it comes out on Friday, February the 16th. When do
That's
you
right.
start touring on the record?
So we got a tour at the end of April, very end of April, the whole of May into the beginning of June with Vended and The Gloom in the Corner. So that's on our
Oh,
Instagram.
I've had the Gloom in the Corner on here. It's very,
Nice.
very cool dude.
Yeah, they seem dope. Like both the bands seem wicked. It's our first proper tour in a bus across Europe, so we're super gassed to be doing that. And that's where people can check us out. But the tour's on our Instagram at Profiler Band. So if people want to come to that tour, then the ticket links is on our in our bio. So check it
And
out.
I'll have all the links in the description to this podcast and the video. Um, I imagine probably you're just thinking about the album release and the European tours. Probably you can't be thinking about US tours right now, right?
Not in the moment. I think that the first tour is our main priority, but we are looking to definitely get over to the States, hopefully Japan and Australia as well, and start touring properly once this album release is kind of commenced. That's the plan. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you got to continue on with Gloom in the Corner if you go to Australia.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Those guys are dope. Super
Well,
excited.
if you do, or when you do, rather, make it to the States and you're in Georgia, holler at your boy and I'll be there.
100%. Yeah, will do, man. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for being here. The album is A Digital Nowhere from Profiler, February the 16th. Y'all go get it.
Nice one. Thank you, dude. Appreciate you.
I'll be there waiting for you.